Dae-ho Kim pressed his face against the small window of his cargo ship and watched the stars move slowly past. He had been flying the same route for 3 years now, carrying supplies from Earth to the outer colonies. It was boring work, but it paid well enough to keep his old ship running. His ship, the Morning Star, was nothing special. It was small, slow, and made strange noises when he turned too quickly. The other species in the galaxy had ships that could cross entire star systems in hours. Dae-ho's ship took days to make the same trip. But it was his ship, and he knew every bolt and wire in it. The cargo hold was full of basic supplies this time: food, medicine, tools, and clothing for the human colony on Kepler 7. The colonists there were trying to grow crops on a planet that fought them every day. The soil was poor, the weather was harsh, and they had to wear breathing masks whenever they went outside. But they were humans, so they kept trying. Dae-ho was thinking about stopping for a meal when his ship's alarm started beeping. Red lights flashed on his control panel. Something was wrong. He looked at his screens and felt his stomach drop. 3 large ships were moving toward him fast, very fast. The ships were huge compared to his little cargo vessel. They were dark, gray with sharp edges and glowing red markings. Dae-ho knew what they were: Vorthak ships. The Vorthak were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were also known for being mean and aggressive. "Unknown vessel, stop your engines and prepare to be boarded," came a deep voice over his radio. The voice spoke in Galactic Standard, but Dae-ho could hear the anger in it. Dae-ho had no choice. His ship had no weapons and could not outrun the Vorthak vessels. He turned off his engines and waited. Within minutes, one of the alien ships attached itself to his cargo hold. He heard heavy footsteps on his ship's metal floor. The airlock door opened with a loud hiss. 3 Vorthak soldiers walked in. They were tall creatures with thick gray skin and 4 arms each. Their eyes were small and yellow, and they wore black armor that made them look even bigger. The leader had more marks on his armor than the others. "You are the ship captain?" the leader asked. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "Yes, I'm Captain Kim," Dae-ho said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is there a problem?" The Vorthak leader looked around the small bridge of Dae-ho's ship. He seemed disgusted by what he saw. "This ship is from Earth, yes? The dirt crawler world?" Dae-ho felt his face get hot. "Earth, yes. I'm carrying supplies to one of our colonies." "Dirt crawlers," the leader said again. And the other 2 soldiers made sounds that might have been laughing. "Your people learned to fly between stars only yesterday. You think you can travel through Vorthak space without paying?" "I have all the proper permits," Dae-ho said quickly. He pulled out his datapad and showed the alien the travel documents. "I filed my flight plan with the Galactic Council." The Vorthak leader barely looked at the documents. "The Council," he said with disgust. "They make rules for important species. You are not important. You will pay the inspection tax." Inspection tax? Dae-ho had never heard of such a thing. "How much?" "Half your cargo," the leader said simply. Dae-ho's mouth fell open. "Half? But that's supplies for a whole colony. People need this food and medicine." "Then they should have sent a real ship to carry it," the leader said. "Not this flying junk pile. Be grateful we do not take it all." The Vorthak soldiers moved into his cargo hold. Dae-ho could only watch as they took crate after crate of supplies. Medicine that could save lives, food that would feed families, tools that the colonists needed to survive. The aliens loaded it all onto their ship without care. "Please," Dae-ho said. "These people are depending on me. They need these supplies." The leader turned back to him. "Dirt crawlers always beg. Your species is weak. You should have stayed on your little blue world where you belong." When they were done, the Vorthak had taken exactly half of everything. They left just enough so that Dae-ho could say he had completed his delivery. But it would not be enough. The colonists would go hungry. Some might get sick without the medicine. "Next time, bring better ship," the leader said as they prepared to leave. "Or stay home." The Vorthak soldiers left his ship and returned to their own vessel. Dae-ho watched their ships fly away into the darkness of space. He sat alone in his pilot's chair for a long time, looking at what was left of his cargo. Far away on Nexus Prime, the galaxy's capital world, Eugene Park was having her own problems with aliens who did not respect humans. The Galactic Council building was enormous. It stretched up into the clouds and was made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. Inside, representatives from hundreds of different species worked to govern the galaxy. At least that was the idea. Yujin walked through the long hallways feeling very small. She was the only human representative to the council, and most days, she felt like no one even knew she was there. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 40 years. That was nothing compared to species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. The council meeting room was shaped like a huge bowl. Seats rose up in circles with the most important species sitting closest to the center. Earth's seat was in the very back, in the section marked for developing worlds. Yujin often wondered why they even bothered to give Earth a seat at all. Today's meeting was about trade routes through the Epsilon sector. It was important for Earth because that was where most of their colonies were located. Yujin had prepared a speech about protecting the rights of smaller species in those trade routes. She waited for hours as other representatives talked. The Nexari, with their blue skin and large heads, spoke about their advanced technology. The Keltharans, who looked like tall, thin birds, discussed their ancient wisdom. The Vorthak representative, a massive creature with scars across his gray skin, demanded more rights for strong species. Finally, Yujin was allowed to speak. She stood up and activated her translator device. "Honored representatives," she began, "I want to talk about the safety of smaller ships in the Epsilon sector. Many of our cargo vessels are being stopped and robbed by—" "The human speaks of robbery," interrupted the Vorthak representative. "We prefer to call it taxation. Weak species should pay strong species for protection." Several other representatives made sounds of agreement. Yujin felt her heart sink. "But these are legal trade routes," she said. "The Galactic Council has rules about—" "Rules for real civilizations," said a Nexari representative. "Earth has been flying in space for less than 50 years. You are like children playing with adult toys." Laughter filled the chamber. Not friendly laughter, but the kind that made Yujin's face burn with shame. "Perhaps," said an elegant Keltharan, "the humans should focus on their own small world until they are ready for galactic society." The council moved on to other business without even voting on Yujin's proposal. She sat in her distant seat, watching, as the real powers of the galaxy made decisions that would affect billions of lives. Earth's voice did not matter here. After the meeting, Yujin walked through the capital city. Nexus Prime was beautiful, with floating buildings and transportation that moved without making any sound. Beings from dozens of species walked the streets, but none of them paid any attention to the lone human. She stopped at a communications center and sent a message back to Earth. It was the same message she sent every week. No progress to report. Earth's concerns continue to be ignored by the major powers. On the edge of the galaxy, on a small space station that served as a repair stop, Tae-Woo Lee was working under the engine of a damaged exploration ship. The ship belonged to a team of human scientists who were trying to map new star systems. It was dangerous work, made more dangerous by the fact that their equipment was always breaking down. Tae-Woo had once been an engineer in Earth's military. He had designed weapons and armor for human soldiers, but when Earth joined the galactic community, they were told that military technology was not needed. The galaxy was peaceful, they said. Civilized species did not fight wars anymore. So Tae-Woo became a mechanic. He fixed engines and life support systems and communication devices. It was honest work, but sometimes he missed the excitement of creating something new and powerful. "How bad is it?" asked Dr. Sarah An, the expedition leader. She was a small woman with tired eyes and grease stains on her lab coat. "The plasma injector is completely burned out," Tae-Woo said, sliding out from under the engine. "I can fix it, but it will take a few days. And this is the third time this month." Dr. An sighed. "The Nexari said this engine would last for years without problems." "The Nexari build engines for Nexari ships," Tae-Woo said. "They did not think about how humans use things. We push our equipment harder than other species." "Because we have to," Dr. An said. "Our ships are slower, our sensors are weaker, our fuel does not last as long, so we work twice as hard to get half the results." Tae-Woo nodded. It was true. Human technology was still far behind the rest of the galaxy. Earth's scientists and engineers were smart, but they were working with basic materials and simple tools. The advanced species kept their best technology to themselves. As he worked on the engine, Taewoo thought about the weapons he used to design. They were not as pretty as alien technology, but they were tough and reliable. They could be fixed, with simple tools and basic parts. The war began on a Tuesday. So-Young Choi was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency alert started flooding her communication device. She was the Admiral of Earth's Defense Force, though most people in the galaxy would have laughed at that title. Earth's entire military consisted of 12 patrol ships, 30 cargo vessels that could be armed in an emergency, and 40,000 soldiers spread across 6 colonies. "Admiral," said her aide, running into her office, "we're getting reports from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire has launched attacks on both the Nexari Federation and the Keltharan Republic." So-Young set down her coffee cup. "Both of them? At the same time?" "Yes, ma'am. Coordinated strikes on their major fleet bases and industrial centers. The reports are still coming in, but it looks like the Vorthak caught them completely by surprise." So-Young activated the large display screen on her office wall. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of small lights representing star systems. As she watched, dozens of those lights changed from blue and green to red. Vorthak conquests. The scale of the attack was enormous. For centuries, the 3 major powers had maintained a careful balance. The Vorthak were aggressive, but not stupid. The Nexari were advanced, but not warlike. The Keltharans were wise, but not quick to act. Everyone assumed this balance would last forever. "Get me a connection to Nexus Prime," So-Young ordered. "I need to speak with Admiral Zeth Ka." But the connection could not be made. Nexus Prime, the capital of galactic civilization, was under attack. Jin-Woo Han was working in his laboratory when the news broke. He was one of Earth's best engineers, specializing in studying alien technology. His lab was filled with devices from dozens of different species. Most of them were broken or outdated, but Jin-Woo learned something from each one. His assistant burst through the lab door. "Jin-Woo, have you seen the news?" "What news?" Jin-Woo was focused on a Nexari plasma generator that had stopped working. "War! The whole galaxy is at war." Jin-Woo looked up from his work. On the news display, he could see images of massive Vorthak warships attacking Nexari space stations. The Nexari ships were fighting back with their advanced weapons, but something was wrong. Their plasma beams seemed to bounce off the Vorthak ships without doing any damage. "How is that possible?" Jin-Woo muttered. "Nexari plasma weapons can cut through anything." He watched more closely as the battle footage continued. The Vorthak ships had some kind of energy field around them, a shield that seemed to adapt to whatever weapons were fired at it. When the Nexari used plasma, the shield absorbed the energy. When the Keltharans used quantum torpedoes, the shield deflected them. "They've developed new technology," Jin-Woo said quietly. "Some kind of adaptive defense system." "Can we help?" his assistant asked. "Can Earth do anything?" Jin-Woo looked around his lab at all the broken alien devices. "I don't know, but I need to understand how those shields work." On the other side of Earth, Hye-Wan Song was having the worst day of her career. As a diplomatic attaché, her job was to maintain good relationships with other species. Today, she was failing badly. The emergency session of Earth's Global Council was not going well. Representatives from every nation were arguing about what Earth should do about the galactic war. "This is not our fight," said the representative from the Asian Alliance. "Earth should remain neutral." "We can't remain neutral," argued the European Federation delegate. "If the Vorthak win, they'll come for us next." "With what army?" laughed the North American Union representative. "We have 12 patrol ships. The Vorthak have thousands of warships." Hye-Wan tried to keep the discussion calm, but everyone was scared. Earth's entire space fleet could be destroyed by a single Vorthak cruiser. If the major powers could not stop the Vorthak, what chance did humanity have? "We need to think about evacuation plans," said the African states delegate. "If the war comes to our sector, we need to be ready to move our people to safety." "Move them where?" asked the South American representative. "The Vorthak are conquering everything." The argument continued for hours. In the end, Earth's government decided to do nothing. They would remain neutral and hope the war would end quickly, with one of the major powers winning. Hye-Wan left the meeting feeling sick. She knew that doing nothing was the same as waiting to die. Dae-ho Kim was trapped at Kepler Station when the war reached the Outer Rim. He had been delivering his reduced cargo to the colony when the Vorthak attacked the system's defense platforms. Within hours, thousands of refugees were fleeing toward the station. The station was not built to handle so many people. It was a simple supply depot with basic life support and minimal facilities. But it was the only safe place in the system, so the refugee ships kept coming. Dae-ho watched from his ship's window as vessels from dozens of different species docked at the station. There were Nexari science ships with their elegant blue hulls, Keltharan transport vessels that looked like flying works of art, even some smaller species that Dae-ho had never seen before. All of them were running from the same thing. "Captain Kim," came a voice over his communication system. "This is Station Commander Velthar. We need your help." Dae-ho opened the channel. "What can I do?" "We have more refugees coming in than we can handle. Some of the ships are damaged and cannot make it to the next system. Can you take some of them?" Dae-ho looked at his small cargo hold. It was mostly empty after delivering supplies to the colony. "How many?" 30 beings, maybe 40. They're mostly civilians. Families with children. Dae-ho had never carried passengers before. His ship was not equipped for it. But he looked out at the refugee ships and saw the fear in their glowing windows. "Send them over," he said. For the next 3 hours, Dae-ho's ship filled with beings he had never seen before. There was a Nexari family with 2 small children who cried in high-pitched whistles, a group of Keltharan scholars who spoke in whispers about the destruction of their home world. Even a few beings from species so rare that they didn't have seats on the Galactic Council. They were all terrified. "Where are we going?" asked one of the Nexari children in broken Galactic Standard. "Somewhere safe," Dae-ho promised, though he wasn't sure where that might be. As his ship left Kepler Station, Dae-ho received reports from other systems. The Vorthak were moving faster than anyone had expected. Their new shield technology made them nearly unstoppable. System after system was falling to their advance. The worst part was how easy it looked. The Vorthak ships moved through space like they were taking a casual trip. Enemy weapons bounced off their shields. Their own weapons cut through enemy ships like paper. On Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Yujin Park sat in her distant seat and watched as the greatest civilizations in the galaxy panicked. "The Nexari Third Fleet has been destroyed," reported Admiral Zethka, his blue skin pale with fear. "The Vorthak shields are adapting to our weapons faster than we can modify them." "The Keltharan defense grid is down," added Prime Minister Kilthara, her feathers ruffled with distress. "They broke through our quantum barriers like they were made of glass." The Vorthak representative was not present. His species had withdrawn from the council when the war began, but everyone knew what the Vorthak wanted. "Complete domination of the galaxy. We need to coordinate our remaining forces," said Admiral Zethka. "Pool our resources and make a stand." "Where?" asked Prime Minister Kilthara. "They've taken 12 major systems in 2 days. Our combined fleets cannot stop them." Yujin listened to the panic and felt a strange calm come over her. She had been ignored and dismissed by these beings for years. They had treated Earth like an annoying child that should be seen but not heard. Now their great civilizations were crumbling and they were acting like children themselves. She activated her communication device and stood up. "The human representative wishes to speak," announced the session moderator, sounding surprised. The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of beings turned to look at the small human in the back row. "Honored representatives," Yujin began, "I know that Earth is considered a minor power. I know that our technology is primitive and our military is small. But my species has experience with wars like this." "Experience?" Admiral Zethka sounded confused. "Your people have never fought an interstellar war." "No," Yujin agreed. "But we have fought wars against superior enemies before. We know what it takes to survive when someone stronger wants to destroy you." "And what is that?" asked Prime Minister Kilthara. "You don't fight them the way they expect you to fight," Yujin said simply. "You use their strength against them. You make them angry so they make mistakes. And you never, ever give up." Some of the representatives made sounds that might have been laughter. Others looked thoughtful. "What is Earth proposing?" asked the session moderator. "Earth is proposing to fight," Yujin said. "We may be small and weak, but we're not going to surrender. And if other species want to join us, they're welcome." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives called the idea foolish. Others seemed interested. A few asked what Earth could possibly do against the Vorthak Empire. Yujin sat down and waited for them to decide. She already knew what Earth's answer would be. Her people had been pushed around by stronger aliens for 40 years. The ultimatum arrived on a Thursday morning. Yujin Park was eating breakfast in her small apartment on Nexus Prime when her communication device started flashing red. Emergency messages were pouring in from Earth, and all of them said the same thing. The Vorthak Empire had sent the same message to every minor species in the galaxy. Submit to Vorthak rule, or be destroyed. You have 30 standard days to decide. Yujin put down her coffee and read the message again. 30 days. The Vorthak were giving the smaller species time to think about it, probably because they enjoyed watching their victims squirm. Or maybe they were just busy conquering the last Nexari and Keltharan strongholds. Her communication device chimed with an incoming call from Earth. The image of President Martinez appeared on her screen, looking tired and worried. "Yujin, I'm sure you've seen the message. The Global Council is meeting in emergency session. We need you to return to Earth immediately." "What's the mood there?" Yujin asked. "Mixed. Some people want to surrender immediately. Others want to fight. Most are just scared." Yujin looked out her window at Nexus Prime. The once beautiful capital city was half empty now. Most of the alien representatives had fled to their home worlds when the war started. The few who remained moved through the streets like ghosts. "I'll catch the next transport," she said. The trip back to Earth took 3 days. Yujin spent the time thinking about what she would say to the Global Council. By the time her ship entered Earth's solar system, she had made her decision. Earth's Global Council met in the same building where humanity had first decided to join the galactic community 40 years ago. The representatives looked older now, and more frightened. The weight of deciding humanity's fate was heavy on all of them. "The military analysis is clear," reported General Hassan. "We cannot fight the Vorthak Empire and win. Their technology is too advanced, their fleet is too large, and their new shield systems make them nearly invulnerable." "What about hiding?" asked the European Federation delegate. "We could evacuate our colonies and pull back to Earth. Maybe they'll ignore us if we make ourselves small enough." "For how long?" Yujin asked. "The Vorthak don't ignore anyone forever. They'll come for us eventually." "So what are you suggesting?" asked the North American Union representative. "That we fight a war we cannot win?" Yujin stood up slowly. She had practiced this speech during her journey home, but now that the moment was here, she felt the weight of history pressing down on her. "I'm suggesting that we remember who we are," she said. "For 40 years, we've tried to be good galactic citizens. We've followed their rules, used their technology, and accepted their judgment that we were too primitive to matter. We've been polite guests in their galaxy." She paused and looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "But this isn't their galaxy anymore. The Vorthak are destroying everything the so-called advanced species built. Their 1,000-year-old civilizations are crumbling in a matter of weeks. Their superior technology is useless against an enemy that adapted to it." "What's your point?" asked the Asian Alliance delegate. "My point is that maybe being primitive isn't such a bad thing," Yujin said. "Maybe the galaxy needs someone who thinks differently, someone who doesn't fight by their rules." The room was quiet for a long moment. "You're talking about a war that could end human civilization," said the African state's representative. "Human civilization is going to end anyway if we surrender," Yujin replied. "The Vorthak don't keep pets. They either absorb useful species into their empire or they eliminate the ones that aren't useful. Which category do you think we fall into?" The debate continued for hours, but Yujin could see the tide turning. Earth's leaders were scared, but they were also angry. 40 years of being treated like children by the galaxy's major powers had left deep wounds. The Vorthak ultimatum was the final insult. When the vote came, it was closer than Yujin had expected. 53% in favor of resistance, 47% for surrender. But a majority was a majority. Earth would fight. While the politicians argued, Kyung-min-jong was already planning for war. As Earth's chief military strategist, he had been thinking about this moment since the Vorthak attacks began. He knew that humanity's only chance lay in doing things that the enemy would never expect. "Forget everything you know about space combat," he told the assembled officers in Earth's military command center. "Every battle doctrine, every tactical manual, every strategic principle. The aliens wrote all of those rules, and the aliens are losing." Admiral So Young Choi leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we fight like humans," Kyung-min said. "Dirty, unpredictable, and without mercy." He activated a holographic display showing the Vorthak fleet formations. "They fight like they're conducting a symphony. Everything coordinated, everything balanced, everything elegant. They expect us to line up our ships and trade volleys like gentlemen." "And we're not going to do that?" asked Colonel Park. "We're going to do everything they don't expect," Kyung-min confirmed. "We're going to ram them, board them, set traps for them, and use their own ships against them. We're going to make them so angry that they stop thinking clearly." The officers looked skeptical. These were careful professional military leaders who had trained their whole careers to follow proper procedures. "Sir," said Commander Lee, "with respect, our ships are no match for theirs in any kind of combat." "You're right," Kyung-min agreed. "In any normal combat. But this won't be normal combat. This will be chaos. And humans are very good at chaos." In his laboratory, Jin-Woo Han was making a discovery that would change everything. He had been studying fragments of Vorthak shield technology for weeks, trying to understand how it worked. The shields were incredibly advanced, using quantum field manipulation to adapt to incoming attacks. When hit by an energy weapon, they would shift to absorb that specific frequency. When struck by kinetic weapons, they would redistribute the impact across their entire surface. But Jin-Woo had noticed something strange in the test data. The shields needed time to adapt. Not much time, only microseconds, but time nonetheless. And during that brief moment of adjustment, they were vulnerable. "HFY. Trick is not to hit them with something stronger," Jin-Woo muttered to himself as he studied the readouts. "The trick is to hit them with something that keeps changing faster than they can adapt." He started sketching designs for a new kind of weapon. Not an energy beam or a simple projectile, but something that would shift its properties while in flight. It would be crude compared to alien technology, but it might work. The design he came up with was surprisingly simple. A magnetic coil gun that fired metal projectiles, but with a twist. The projectiles would have internal gyroscopes and small thrusters that would change their spin and trajectory while moving toward the target. The shields would try to adapt to one type of impact, but by the time they locked onto the projectiles' characteristics, those characteristics would have changed. "It's like trying to catch a ball that keeps changing into different sports," Jin-Woo said to his assistant. "Eventually, your hands don't know what to expect." Yoon Ji-moon was one of the first volunteers for Earth's new fighter pilot program. She had been flying civilian transports for 5 years, but when the war started, she knew she wanted to do more than carry cargo. The recruitment center was crowded with people who felt the same way. Young men and women who had grown up hearing stories about how primitive Earth was compared to the rest of the galaxy. They were tired of being embarrassed by their own species. "I want to fly fighters," Yoon-ji told the recruitment officer. "We don't have fighters," the officer replied. "We have patrol ships and cargo vessels." "Then I want to fly whatever we use to fight." The officer looked at her application. "You have experience with atmospheric flight?" "I've been flying since I was 16, Yoon-ji said. "My family owns a transport company on Mars." "Good. Report to Luna Base tomorrow. You'll be training on modified cargo ships." Yoon-ji raised an eyebrow. "Cargo ships?" "We're calling them strike craft now," the officer said with a grim smile. "Same ships, different mission." Dong-Hyun Yu was working on a different kind of weapon entirely. As one of Earth's leading theoretical physicists, he had been asked to develop unconventional approaches to warfare. "The problem with fighting the Vorthak," he explained to his research team, "is that we're thinking like civilized beings. We're trying to build better weapons and stronger shields and faster ships. Isn't that how wars are won?" asked one of his assistants. "That's how alien wars are won," Dong-Hyun corrected. "But humans have a different approach to conflict. We use the environment. We set traps. We turn our enemy's strengths into weaknesses." showed them a map of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "What if we don't fight them in open space?" he suggested. "What if we fight them here, where their big ships are a disadvantage and their fancy technology can't help them?" The research team looked at the map with new interest. "You're talking about an ambush," said Dr. Kim. "I'm talking about 1,000 ambushes," Dong-hyun replied. "Hidden weapons platforms, concealed missile batteries, fake asteroids packed with explosives. We turn our entire solar system into a trap." The Galactic Council would never approve such tactics, worried Dr. Lee. The first shots of the Battle of Sol were fired at 1423 Earth Standard Time. Fleet Commander Thak Vos had expected the human ships to form defensive lines around their home world, making it easy for his superior firepower to destroy them systematically. Instead, the human vessels scattered like frightened birds, diving into the asteroid belt and disappearing among the floating rocks. "Cowards," Thak Vos growled to his bridge crew. "They run and hide like children." "Should we pursue them into the asteroid field?" asked his tactical officer. "Of course, we will hunt them down one by one." That was exactly what Admiral So-Young Choi had hoped he would say. Yoonji Moon was hiding behind a large asteroid when the first Vorthak cruiser entered the belt. The alien ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, its dark hull gleaming with energy, conduits and weapon ports. It moved slowly through the asteroids, its sensors sweeping for human ships. "Strike Team Alpha, this is Strike Leader Moon," Yoonji whispered into her communicator. "Target is in position. Execute attack pattern Hornet." 5. Cargo ships emerged from behind different asteroids, firing Jinwoo's experimental weapons at the Vorthak cruiser. The magnetic projectiles spiraled through space, their internal systems changing their flight patterns every few seconds. The Vorthak shields tried to adapt to the incoming fire, but every time they locked onto one projectile's characteristics, those characteristics changed. Spinning metal rounds suddenly became tumbling debris. Straight trajectories became wild curves. The shield system, designed to handle predictable alien weapons, struggled with the chaotic human approach. 3 projectiles punched through the weakened shields and struck the cruiser's hull. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was enormous. For the first time since the war began, someone had hurt a Vorthak ship. "Impossible!" roared Thak Vos when he received the damage report. "How did primitive weapons penetrate? Our shields?" "The projectiles kept changing their properties," reported his tactical officer. "Our defensive systems could not establish a lock. Then we destroy them with overwhelming firepower. All ships converge on the asteroid belt. Burn it clean." Minho Seo was monitoring the battle from Earth's communications center. As a former Nexari liaison, he had contacts throughout the galaxy who were sending him real-time intelligence about the Vorthak fleet movements. "Admiral," he reported to So-Young, "I'm getting reports from Nexari resistance cells. They say the Vorthak commander is ordering his entire fleet into the asteroid belt." "Perfect," So-Young replied. "Signal all strike teams. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was where Dong-hyun Yu's preparations came into play. For months, human engineers had been secretly installing weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt. They looked like ordinary rocks from the outside, but they were packed with missiles and automated guns. As the Vorthak fleet moved deeper into the belt, these hidden weapons began to activate. Suddenly, asteroids that had seemed harmless were launching attacks from every direction. Fleet Commander Thak Vos watched his tactical display in growing fury as red warning lights appeared around his ships. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. "Sir, we're taking fire from multiple sources," reported his weapons officer. "The asteroids themselves appear to be armed." "Destroy them all," Thak Vos ordered. But there were thousands of asteroids in the belt, and the Vorthak could not tell which ones were real and which ones were weapons platforms. They began firing at everything, filling space with energy beams and explosions. This was exactly what Kyungmin Jang had planned. The more the Vorthak fired, the more debris they created. And in the chaos of floating rocks and metal fragments, human strike teams could hide and attack without being detected. Ji-hee Kang was leading one of those strike teams. Her ship was a modified mining vessel armed with cutting tools that had been turned into weapons. She watched a Vorthak destroyer blast apart an asteroid that might have been a weapons platform, then moved in for the kill. "This is Strike Team Delta," she reported. "Moving to attack pattern Mongoose." Her ship accelerated toward the Vorthak destroyer, using chunks of floating debris as cover. The alien crew was so focused on hunting for hidden weapons that they did not notice the small human vessel approaching from below. Jihee's ship was equipped with industrial cutting lasers designed to slice through asteroid rock. Against the underside of the Vorthak destroyer, they proved surprisingly effective. The lasers carved through the alien hull like it was made of paper. "Target's main reactor is exposed," reported her engineer. Preparing charges, the human strike team planted explosive charges directly inside the Vorthak ship's reactor chamber, then fled as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, the destroyer erupted in a brilliant explosion that lit up half the asteroid. "Belt. Confirmed kill on Vorthak destroyer," Jihai reported. "Strike Team Delta moving to secondary position." Across the solar system, similar battles were taking place. Human ships struck from hiding, damaged their targets, and disappeared before the Vorthak could respond effectively. It was not elegant or honorable by galactic standards, but it was working. Hyun Soo Bai was coordinating communications with resistance groups across the galaxy from his position on Luna Base. His job was to make sure that news of the battle reached every species that was fighting against the Vorthak. "This is Luna Base to Nexari Resistance Cell 7, he transmitted on an encrypted channel. "Human forces have engaged a Vorthak fleet in Sol system. We are sending you technical specifications for anti-shield weaponry." "Luna Base, this is Cell 7, came the reply. "Are you saying that human weapons can penetrate Vorthak shields?" "Confirmed. We've scored multiple hits using adaptive kinetic projectiles, transmitting construction details now." Similar conversations were taking place with resistance groups throughout the galaxy. For the first time since the war began, someone was sharing technology that could hurt the Vorthak, and that someone was the species everyone had dismissed as primitive. Back in the asteroid belt, Fleet Commander Thakvos was discovering that his superior technology meant nothing in close-quarters combat among floating debris. His large ships were designed for open space battles, not for hunting small targets among rocks and metal fragments. "Sir, we've lost 3 destroyers and 2 cruisers," reported his tactical officer. "The humans are using guerrilla tactics." "Guerrilla tactics?" Thakvos had never heard the term before. "Hit-and-run attacks, sir. They strike without warning and disappear before we can respond. It's undisciplined." "Undisciplined," Thakvos repeated. The word tasted bad in his mouth. The Vorthak prided themselves on their military discipline and tactical precision. They fought wars the proper way with honor and strength. These humans fought like wild animals. "Pull the fleet back," he ordered. "We will bombard their world from a distance." But when the Vorthak ships tried to withdraw from the asteroid belt, they found their path blocked. While they had been hunting human strike teams, other human ships had been moving large asteroids into position. The aliens were trapped in a maze of floating rocks, and every rock might be hiding weapons or enemies. Admiral So Young watched the tactical display from Luna Base with grim satisfaction. The Vorthak fleet was exactly where she wanted them, confused, scattered, and angry. All. "Strike teams, this is Admiral Choi," she announced. "Begin final assault. Target their command ship." Thakvos realized his mistake too late. He had allowed himself to be drawn into a fight on terms that favored his enemy. The humans had used his own aggression against him, making him angry enough to follow them into a trap. "All ships, form defensive formation around the command vessel," he ordered. But it was too late for formations. The human strike teams were already among his ships, attacking from every direction at once. Their crude weapons and chaotic tactics made it impossible to establish effective defenses. Yoonji Moon led the final assault on the Vorthak command ship. Her cargo vessel, now scarred by battle damage and running low on fuel, dove toward the massive alien cruiser like a metal meteor. "This is Strike Leader Moon," she announced to her team. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy the command ship. We're trying to capture it." The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of simply destroying the Vorthak flagship, they were going to board it and take it intact. Kyung-min Jang wanted to study Vorthak technology, and Admiral So Young wanted to send a message to the galaxy. Yoonji's ship crashed through the command ship's weakened shields and attached itself to the alien hull like a parasite. Cutting tools carved an opening into the Vorthak vessel, and human marines poured through the breach. The fighting inside the alien ship was brutal in close quarters. The Vorthak were larger and stronger than humans, but they were not used to boarding actions. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not for fighting in narrow corridors. The humans, on the other hand, had been practicing this kind of combat for centuries. They moved through the alien ship like they owned it, clearing room after room with ruthless efficiency. Fleet Commander Thakvos made his last stand on the bridge of his flagship. He fought with the fury of a warrior who knew his honor was lost. But it was not enough. Human Marines overwhelmed his guards and took him prisoner. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Supreme Commander Vek Thul was dead, and the Vorthak Empire was collapsing from within. Dae-ho Kim stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching construction crews from a dozen different species work together to complete humanity's gift to the galaxy. The space station hung in Earth's orbit like a massive silver flower, its arms reaching out toward the stars. It was hard to believe that half a year ago, he had been just a cargo ship captain, running supplies to forgotten colonies. Now he commanded the Galactic Humanitarian Fleet, coordinating relief efforts across dozens of war-torn systems. "Captain Kim," came a voice behind him. He turned to see Dr. Sarah An, the expedition leader he had rescued from Kepler Station so long ago. She now wore the uniform of the reformed Galactic Council's Science Division. "Dr. An," Dae-ho smiled. "How are the reconstruction efforts going on Nexus Prime?" "Better than expected," she replied. "The Nexari are adapting to human engineering techniques faster than we thought they would. It turns out that sometimes simple solutions work better than elegant ones." Dae-ho nodded. That had become a common theme in the post-war galaxy. Human approaches to technology, tactics, and diplomacy were spreading everywhere, not because they were more advanced, but because they were more practical. "The ceremony starts in an hour," Dr. An reminded him. "Are you ready?" Dae-ho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, former Vorthak worlds were learning how to govern themselves. Resistance fighters were returning home to rebuild their civilizations, and species that had never worked together before were discovering the benefits of cooperation. "I think so," he said quietly. In the main auditorium of New Geneva Station, representatives from 347 different species were gathering for the signing of the Terran Accords. The document that would establish the new government of the galaxy had been written primarily by humans, but it incorporated ideas from every major civilization. Eugene Park stood at the podium, preparing to deliver the most important speech of her life. She was no longer just Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. She had been elected as the first Secretary General of the reformed Galactic Council, with the support of species from across the galaxy. The irony was not lost on her. The woman who had once sat in the back row, ignored by the major powers, was now the leader of galactic civilization. "Honored representatives," she began. 6 months ago, our galaxy was ruled by fear. The strong preyed on the weak, and the weak accepted their fate because they believed they had no choice." The auditorium was silent. Beings from hundreds of different worlds listened to the human woman who had helped save them all. "Today, we gather to sign accords that will ensure such tyranny never rises again, not because we are stronger than our oppressors, but because we have learned to stand together." In the audience, Admiral So-Young Choi watched with pride. She now commanded the Galactic Defense Force, a multi-species military organization based on human tactical principles. Earth ships formed the backbone of the fleet, but vessels from every major civilization served alongside them. The old doctrine of elegant space battles and honorable combat had been replaced by something more practical. The new galactic military fought to win, using whatever tactics worked best. They were not as pretty as the old fleets, but they were far more effective. The Terran Accords established 3 fundamental principles, Eugene continued. First, that no species has the right to dominate another. Second, that technological advancement must be shared for the benefit of all. And third, that every sentient being has the right to determine their own destiny. Kyungmin Jang listened from his seat among the Earth delegation. He had been offered command positions in the new military, but he had chosen instead to remain on Earth as head of the Strategic Planning Institute. His job now was to make sure that humanity never again found itself unprepared for war. The Institute was developing new technologies and tactics, not just for humans, but for all species. The old way of keeping military secrets had died with the Vorthak Empire. In the new galaxy, survival depended on cooperation. These principles may seem simple, Yujin said, but they represent a fundamental change in how we view ourselves and each other. We are no longer separate species competing for dominance. We are partners working toward a common future. Jin Wuhan was not present for the ceremony. He was in his laboratory on Luna Base, working on the next generation of defensive technologies. The galaxy was at peace, but Jin Wu knew that peace had to be protected. His anti-shield weapons had become standard equipment throughout the galaxy. But more importantly, his approach to engineering was being taught in schools across hundreds of worlds. The idea that simple, adaptable technology could be more effective than complex systems was revolutionizing galactic civilization. Students from every species came to study at Earth's universities now. They wanted to learn the human way of solving problems through creativity, persistence, and the willingness to try unconventional approaches. The galaxy we are building will not be perfect, Yujin continued. There will be disagreements, conflicts, and challenges that we cannot yet imagine. But we will face these problems together, as equals, with respect for our differences and commitment to our common values. Taewoo Lee watched the ceremony from his workshop on Mars. He had finally returned to weapons design, but now he was building defensive systems for the entire galaxy. His latest project was a network of early warning sensors that would detect any future attempt at galactic conquest. The Vorthak had succeeded initially because they had caught everyone by surprise. That would never happen again. The new galaxy would be ready for threats, internal and external. In closing, Yujin said, I want to remind everyone that the freedom we celebrate today was not won by the strong or the advanced. It was won by those who refused to surrender, who fought with whatever tools they had, and who never stopped believing that things could be better. The ceremony concluded with the signing of the accords. One by one, representatives from every species in the galaxy added their names to the document. Some signed with traditional writing instruments, others used energy patterns, and a few species that communicated through song added their melodies to a special audio recording. Yunji Moon was among the Earth delegation, wearing the uniform of the Galactic Defense Force's Strike Wing. She had become something of a legend after the Battle of Seoul, but she preferred to focus on training the next generation of pilots. The old distinction between military and civilian space travel had largely disappeared. In the new galaxy, every ship carried defensive weapons, and every pilot knew basic combat tactics. The lesson of the Vorthak War was clear. Freedom had to be defended by everyone, not just professional soldiers. As the ceremony ended and the representatives began to mingle, Dae-ho made his way through the crowd toward an observation lounge. He wanted a few minutes alone to process what had just happened. He found the lounge occupied by an unexpected guest. Fleet Commander Thak Vos, the former Vorthak officer who had led the attack on Seoul, sat quietly looking out at the stars. He had been a prisoner of war for 6 months, but had recently been granted parole as part of the post-war reconciliation efforts. Commander, Dae-ho said carefully. Relations with former Vorthak officers were still delicate. Captain Kim, Thak Vos replied without turning around, I have been watching your ceremony. What did you think of it? The alien officer was quiet for a long moment. When I first met your species, I thought you were weak, primitive, unworthy of notice. And now? Now I understand that strength is not always what it appears to be, Thak Vos said. My people built the greatest military force in galactic history. We conquered systems that had stood for millennia. We believed that power made us superior. He finally turned to look at Dae-ho. But when we faced real resistance, when we faced beings who refused to be conquered, our strength became weakness. Our rigid tactics became predictable. Our certainty became blindness. The war is over, Dae-ho said. Everyone deserves a chance to start fresh. Perhaps, Thak Vos agreed. But I want you to know that what your species accomplished was not luck. It was not accident. It was strength of a kind that my people never understood. Later that evening, as New Geneva Station celebrated the birth of a new galactic order, Yujin stood again at an observation window. Earth hung below her, blue and beautiful and peaceful. It was still the same world that had been dismissed as a backwater planet just months ago, but everything else had changed. Dr. An joined her at the window. Hard to believe, isn't it? 6 months ago, we were hiding from Vorthak patrols. Now we're the leaders of galactic civilization. We're not the leaders, Yujin corrected gently. We're the facilitators. There's a difference. Is there? Yujin smiled. A leader tells people what to do. A facilitator helps people figure out what they want to do and how to do it together. That's the human way. Around them, the celebration continued. Beings from hundreds of worlds shared food, music, and stories. They were learning to know each other not as aliens, but as neighbors. The Nexari were teaching others about their advanced mathematics. The Keltherans shared their ancient philosophy.